Salvete viatores, and welcome to the first episode of Let's Translate Eutropius's Breviarium Historiae Romanae ab Orbe Condita. To give the briefest backgrounds on the work, not much is known about Eutropius himself, apart from him being the Magister Memoriae, or the Imperial Secretary, but this work, a summary of Roman history from the founding of the city, was written in the 4th century CE, covering from the city's foundation to the reign of the Emperor Jovian. It's relatively simple Latin, relative being the operative word, so I thought it would be a good place to start. And start we shall, with our first sentence, Romanum Imperium, quod neque ab exordio ulum fere minus neque clementis toto orbe amplius humana potest memoria recordari a Romulo exordium habet, qui rei Silviae vestalis virginis filius et, quantum putatus est, martis cum remo fratere uno partu editus est. Starting with a rather long sentence already. Get used to that. Latin writers like having very long sentences. But let's not get ahead of ourselves and just start Romanum Imperium, the Roman Empire. Imperium is our subject of the sentence, with Romanum as an adjective modifying Imperium. And then we've got quo. Quo shows the start of a relative clause. Lots of words starting with QU are relative pronouns. So when you see this kind of word, then you know you're in for a relative clause. And the end of it, thankfully shown by the punctuation of this version of the text, is easily identifiable as right after recordati. So, with this relative clause, our subject is memoria, with humana modifying it as another adjective, like Romanum with Imperium. We've got our verb, in potest, and then we've got an infinitive verb. The infinitive is basically like to do something, instead of like doing something. So in this instance, it is able, specifically human memory, is able to recall. And then in fact, we have an adverb right here, infere. Adverbs, of course, modify a verb, just like adjectives do for nouns. But fere here is kind of interesting because of this word right here. A little conjunction, neque, which normally means and not, but then you also have the instance where neque, and later on there's another neque, that means neither nor, but then when it is a negative clause, so not whatever the verb is, fere changes meaning. Normally it's like, this thing is about this, it's generally this, but in a negative clause, fere changes its meaning to it's scarcely this. And I don't think it sounds quite right to be like, which neither human memory is able to scarcely recall, nor it just doesn't quite sound right. So I think I'm just gonna ignore ignore the first neque, just kind of delete it from the sentence, having it's introducing the negative part of the sentence, giving it over to fere, so that it is which human memory is able to scarcely recall. The second neque, I'm not as sure on. I think it could be fine as still nor, but I'm not completely sure on that. But anyway, getting ahead of myself again. So, we have our object in this relative clause as ulum, anything, and then minus, so anything less, and we've got a prepositional phrase right here with ab exordio. Normally I think of ab as from, so this would be from the beginning, but it also kind of makes sense in this context for it to be at the beginning, which is what I've seen it translated as before. So far this relative clause is which human memory is able to scarcely recall anything lesser at its beginning, or from its beginning, if you think that sounds better. And then neque, nor. And then we've got amplius here, with which amplius and minus are functioning very similarly. They're like comparative adverbs. So minus is lesser, amplius is greater. But then we don't have another object here, because incrementis, toto, and orbe are all in the ablative case, whereas ulum is in the accusative, which is how we know that it's the direct object. So we're just going to reuse ulum for amplius. So anything greater, incrementis is using the ablative of... I always have trouble remembering the exact names of the uses of the ablative. The ablative of respect. It is using the ablative of respect, or specification. So it's like anything greater in respect to its growth, which is what incrementum means. Though you could easily just shorten that to make it flow better in English, by saying anything greater in its growth. That just sounds much better in English. And then toto orbe. These are just placed where with toto, once again modifying orbe. And that's just in the whole world, on the whole world, whichever one of those sounds better to you. So what we've got so far is the Roman Empire, which human memory is able to scarcely recall anything lesser than it, because the quo is in the ablative, and that along with minus is showing like a comparison. At its beginning, the Roman Empire, which human memory is able to scarcely recall anything lesser than it at its beginning, nor anything greater in its growth in the whole world. Cool. So now, moving on, we've got another prepositional phrase with a Romulo, and ignore that I can't draw over there because for some reason it won't let me. We've got, in fact, the main verb or the sentence right here with habet, and the main object of the sentence with exordium. So our subject is the Roman Empire, and if we just ignore this relative clause, because relative clauses are not necessary to the sentence, so the sentence should make sense without it, we've got the Roman Empire has its beginning a Romulo from Romulus. Those are the basic parts of the sentence. Everything else is not necessary to what the sentence is. So let's go through all that fluff. So we've got qui, another relative clause. And I believe it just goes to the end of the sentence. Because all of this is just helping to describe Romulus. So, we've got who being Romulus, is a son. I'm not sure if this est is going with editus, or if it's being used for filios as the main verb of this phrase, or the clause. Because we've also got putatos est, which is a perfect passive participle, and so is editus, but maybe est could just... Either we're using another est, like we're using an est twice, or we're just sort of... an est is being implied, but not explicitly stated. Either way, Romulus, who is a son, and in fact, this is the subject. Well, no, it's not really the subject. When you say something is something, the case stays the case stays the same. Usually in the nominative. In fact, I think always in the nominative there will be. But who is a son of Rhea Silvia? Rhea Silviae is in the genitive, showing possession. Vestalis Virginis, a Vestal Virgin. And quantum putatos est, actually, this will go better ahead of all that, because quantum putatos est, as much as it is believed, so how this really should be is from Romulus, who, as much as it is believed, is a son of Rhea Silvia, a Vestal Virgin, and Mars. And then we have actually got not relative clause, a prepositional phrase with cum remo fratre. Editus is like produced? I would say maybe born? Born with his brother Remus from one birth. You have to really use the context to figure out, okay, how far does this prepositional phrase go? But, so, cum remo fratre just makes sense with his brother Remus, and then uno partu are doing a different thing. They're doing ablative of separation, I think? Yeah, they are doing ablative of separation, which is different from this prepositional phrase. And then that's the end of the sentence. So, let's go over this whole sentence. The Roman Empire, which human memory is able to scarcely recall anything lesser than it at its beginning, nor anything greater in its growth in the whole world, has its beginning from Romulus, who, as much as it is believed, is a son of Rhea Silvia, a Vestal Virgin, and Mars, born with his brother Remus from one part. I am sort of just inserting his, but it just makes sense to have his there. At least that's what sounds better to me. Okay, first sentence completed. Now the second one, which is not as long, is cum inter pastores latero quinaretor, decem et octo annos natus, urbem exiguam in Palatino monte constituit, undecimum calendas Maias, Olympiades sextae anno tertio. Oh wait, no, that's the end. No, that isn't the end. Yeah, it is just two sentences. Hold on. The shortening of calendas mixed me up with the little period there. Yeah. Iscum inter pastores latero canaretor, decem et octo annos natus, urbem exiguam in Palatino monte constituit, undecimum calendas Maias, Olympiades sextae anno tertio, post Troiae excidium, ut qui plurimum minimum quae trarunt, anno tricentesimo nonagesimo quarto. So it is just as long. 2 sentences for 1 paragraph. All English teachers must be screaming. But, let's see. Uscum inter pastores lato canaritor. So, we just saw cum as a preposition. It is not a preposition right here. Inter is a preposition. Going with this, inter pastores. Cum here is a conjunction, meaning when. Is is our subject, the pronoun he, and latero canaritor is our verb right here. And it is, I'm just going to do a little bit of verb identifying. It is third person singular, imperfect subjunctive, I believe, and active. Because what's the first person singular present active indicative version of this? I know it's a deponent verb. Deponent verbs are fun because they don't have passive versions of them. They just look passive all the time, even though they're active. That's just wonderful. Latrokenor is what the basic version of this word is. The word you will have to look up in a dictionary. That is what it is. But yeah. So, we have when, he being Romulus, was... This word is kind of funny, because its meaning is like highway robbing or being a bandit, and I'm just going to translate this as banditing, because I think that just sounds funny. So when he was banditing among shepherds, deco et octo annos natus, literally this little phrase is born for 10 and 8 years, aka 18 years old. And I just want to bring up for this little phrase that when you're learning Latin in like high school, at least, the first 2 years of Latin, that's what I did in high school at least, you learn how to count up to 20. And how I learned for 18, 19, and 20 was duo de vigenti, un de vigenti, vigenti. 2 from 20, 1 from 20, 20. I know some other languages also count that way, but I just find it interesting that Eutropius opts for 10 and 8 instead of a duo de vigenti. But with that aside, so we know that Romulus was 18 when urbam exiguam in Palatino Monte constituit. He founded an exiguam urbem. Exiguous is a fun one because you could choose all sorts of words for just something that's like teeny, not satisfactory. I like to say paltry, a paltry city on the Palatine Hill. Also, prepositional phrase right here. Verb and object. That's an adjective modifying orbem. There we go. A little more marking up. And then we've got undecimum calendas maias. And this phrase is actually shortened even further than just calendas. The full phrase is ante diem undecimum calendas maias. And what that whole phrase literally means is 11 days before the calends of May. Now what the heck is the calends of May? Well, all calendars count the passage of time in reference to a specific thing. The Gregorian calendar, which we still use today, uses the supposed birth date of Jesus of Nazareth as a reference to count the years. We count what day it is in reference to the first day of the month. The Romans, of course, did this as well, except they used different references. Some of you may already know that the Romans counted years ab orbe condita, from the founding of the city. The Romans, however, had 3 reference points for what day of the month it was, counting how many days there were until the next signpost day. The first of these, on the first of the month, is the calends, or in Latin, the calendae. Then came the nones, or noni, which landed on either the 5th day of hollow months or the 7th day of full months. Just like months now, they have either 30 or 31 days and are called hollow or full, respectively. February was still weird and had 28 days. It's also called the noni because it is the 9th day before the Ides. The Ides falls on either the 13th or 15th, depending on if the month is full or hollow, and in Latin is called the Idus. So, Eutropius says that Rome was built 11 days before the calends of May. April is a hollow month, so it has 30 days. Counting from the 1st of May, including the 1st of May, we get the 21st of April. So the 11th day before the calends of May, the day Rome was founded, April 21st. That's generally the traditional date for the founding of Rome. And so Eutropius follows suit. But then what year was Rome founded? Well, Olympiades sextae anno tertio. In the 3rd year, this is anno tertio is ablative of time when. Olympiades sextae. In the third year of the 6th Olympiad. And that's just a little modifying thing, because it's genitive for possession. And the 3rd year of the 6th Olympiad. When is that? Well, the Romans did not only count the years in reference to the founding of their city, but they also borrowed from the Greeks, among other things, their system of counting years based on the Olympic Games. The Olympic Games took place once every 4 years, and those 4 years are what's called an Olympiad. So here we have the 3rd year of the 6th Olympiad, the 3rd year in the 6th set of 4 years. The first Olympiad starts in 776 BCE. So that comes out to 753 BCE. And 753 BCE is also the traditional year for the founding of Rome, though some do try to say it's 754, but we're just going to use Eutropius for now, since that's who we're translating. But then, I'm not sure why, but Eutropius wants to give us one more reference point. Post Troiae excidium, after the destruction of Troy. Post Troiae excidium, ut qui plurimum minimumque trarunt, anno trecentesimo nonagesimo quarto. This whole thing, another ablative of time when. In the 390th, in the 394th year after the destruction of Troy. Also, this whole thing is a prepositional phrase. But okay. So he's giving us a reference date for the destruction of Troy, but we already know from the Olympiad that Rome was founded in 753 BCE. So then there's nothing really defined for this Troy destruction reference date, right? Well, I mean, could always find out when Eutropius thinks the destruction of Troy took place. So let's do that.
There's not really much to do here other than some basic arithmetic, actually. You take 753 and add 394 since we're dealing with two negative numbers. And boom, you get 1147 BCE as the year Troy was destroyed by the Achaeans.
But anyways, 3 different reference points for dating the foundation of Rome. Fun times. And then we've just got a little phrase to finish up. Ut qui plurimum minimumque tradunt. Tradunt verb, and these minimumque and plurimumque. Not plurimumque. Plurimum minimumque. Que, when you see it at the end of a word, it just means and. You basically just insert and at the beginning of the word that it is attached to. But okay, so ut's weird. I never remember exactly what it means. It differs depending on the grammatical mood of the verb of the phrase that it's in. And here it is in tradunt is indicative. So ut should be like as those who, this is technically a relative clause, as those who give higher and lower. And that's basically the whole phrase. This is a weird one because, well, scholars, I don't think have, at least from what I've seen, have not really been able to figure out exactly what is the exact grammatical structure of this little phrase. Though what's generally agreed upon is that it's basically Eutropius saying there are people who give higher dates for the destruction of Troy and lower dates for the destruction of Troy. I'm just going to take about the middle. So, yeah, that's kind of what this thing is. It's weird, but kind of just have to deal with that sometimes. But okay, that is the entire first paragraph, first chapter of this work. To end this off, I think I will do a reading of the whole chapter, first in Latin, and then with an English translation. Romanum Imperium, quod neque ab exordio ullum fere minus neque incrementis toto orbe amplius humana potest memoria recordari, a Romulo exordium habet, qui rei Silviae, vestalis virginis, filius et, quantum putatus est, martis cum remo fratre uno partu editus est. Iscum inter pastores latrocenaretur, decem et octo annos natus, urbem exiguam in Palatino monte constituit undecimum calendas Maias, Olympiadas sextae anno tertio, post Troiae excidium, ut qui plurimum minimumque trarunt, anno 30º The Roman Empire, which human memory is able to scarcely recall anything lesser at its beginning, nor anything greater in its growth in the whole world, has its beginning from Romulus, who, as far as it is believed, is a son of Rhea Silvia, a Vestal Virgin, and Mars, born with his brother Remus from one birth. When he was banditing among shepherds at 18 years of age, he founded a paltry city on the Palatine Hill, 11 days before the calends of May, in the 3rd year of the 6th Olympiad, about 394 years after the destruction of Troy. Alright. Until next time, where we read more on how Romulus kept the fledgling city he founded afloat. Valete, viatores.